All right, here's how you do question number one. When you read the problem, okay, always check for keywords. Here, the keyword is net change. And that word basically it means that we're going to subtract the last amount that was mentioned. We're going to subtract the first amount that was mentioned. So what was the last amount? 2.7 times 10 to the negative third power. But instead of using that number, I'm going to use a different one. So I'm going to use 5.3 times 10 to the negative fourth power. This was the last number. And the first number, it says here that a substance that loses, and loses mean negative. So it loses 3.2 times 10 to the negative third power. I'm going to use a different number. I'm going to use negative 1.5 times 10 to the negative 4 power. And how do we add or subtract numbers in scientific notation? You need to make sure that your exponents are the same. And you can see the exponents here are the same. When the exponents are the same, you're going to take the coefficients, okay, the two that I underline, and I'm going to subtract them in my calculator. And that's what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so in your calculator, what you're going to do is you're going to subtract 5.3. I'm going to subtract negative 1.5. Okay, so you can see I have that double negative. That's why in my answer I get 6.8. So this will be 6.8 right here. And then I'm going to keep the power of 10. So I'm going to keep times 10 with the same exponent. And that's how you do problem number one. In problem number two, when you read the problem, the keyword here is decreases. Okay, the word decreases mean we're going to subtract. So they gave you two numbers in scientific notation. I'm going to give you two different numbers. I'm giving you a similar example. So let's say you have 7.5 times 10 to the negative third power. And this is how much you started. And then it decreases by, let's say it's 2.4 times 10 to the negative third power. Again, like I mentioned in the previous problem, the only time you can add or subtract numbers in scientific notation is when you have the same exponent, and I do. When you have the same exponent, what you're going to do is you're going to subtract the coefficients, so the ones that I underline in red. So taking your calculator, you're going to subtract 7.5, you're going to subtract 2.4, and when you do that in the calculator, you're going to get 5.1. So I'm going to put my answer here, 5.1. And once you subtract the coefficients, the only thing you have to do next is you're going to keep the power of 10. So you're going to keep times 10, and then you're going to write the exponent negative 3 because it's the same one. And that's how you do problem number two. And problem number three, another word problem. Look for keywords that mean something in math, in this case, addition or subtraction. Whenever you see the word gain, that means addition. Okay, so we're going to take the two numbers and we're going to add them. Again, I'm going to use different numbers. Okay, so I'm going to give you a similar example. So let's say you have something like this, that the first number was 3.2 times 10 to the negative 12 power, and the word gain means add. So let's say you added 4.5 times 10 to the negative 12 power. Every time you're adding numbers in scientific notation, you need to make sure you have the same exponents, and you can see we do. Okay, so once you know they're the same exponent, in this case, I'm going to add the coefficients, the numbers that I underline in red. Take your calculator, and when you take your calculator and you add 3.2 with 4.5, look what I got in my calculator. Okay, 7.7. So write your answer, the ones that I underlined in red that you added, 7.7. And what you're going to do now is you're going to keep the 10 times 10, and you keep the same exponent. And that's how you do problem number 3. Problem number 4 is the same idea, but it's not a word problem, okay? But instead of adding, we're gonna be subtracting. So let me erase this. So here, now you're careful because now we're working with negative numbers and the coefficient. So you see the two numbers here, I'm gonna change it. So let's say you have negative 2.3 times 10 to the negative 9 power. And they ask you to subtract that number to subtract positive 5.9 times 10 to the negative 11 power. Keep in mind that when you're adding and subtracting numbers in scientific notation, you need to check that the exponents of the tens, they are the same. By the way, I made a mistake here. Let me fix this. Okay, I didn't mean to put negative 11. I meant to put negative 9 here. So as you can see, we have the same exponent. So what you're going to do is you're going to subtract the two numbers, the two coefficients of each scientific notation. Using your calculator, that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to take negative 2.3 and I'm going to subtract 5.9. Use the calculator to do this. You can see I got negative 8.2. So this will be here negative 8.2. And we're going to keep the 10 after you subtract the coefficient. You're going to keep the 10 and the same exponent. And that's how you do problem number 4. Problem number 5, we are subtracting two numbers in scientific notation, but you're going to see now that we have different exponents. So let me make a problem out here, okay? So let's say you have 4.56 take away, times 10 to the negative 5th power, and we want to subtract 6.78 times 10 to the negative 4 power. Okay, if you notice, when I'm subtracting these two numbers that are similar to the original question 5, if you notice the exponents of the tens, they are not the same. That's why I use different colors. So what you're gonna do, is you're gonna go to the smallest exponent. Now be careful when you are working with negative numbers. The more negative the number is, smaller is the number. And when I mean more negative, negative 5 is more negative than negative 4. Negative 5 is farther away from 0 than negative 4. So the smallest number here is negative 5. Okay, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna make negative 5 become negative 4. And how do we do that? We just add one more. Now adding one more means I'm gonna take the decimal point of 4.56 and I'm gonna move it one time to the left. So now I'm gonna have a new decimal, 0.456 times 10 to the negative 4 power. And then the other number remains the same, 6.78 times 10 to the negative 4 power. And I hope you notice now we have the same exponent. And when you have the same exponent, then you can take your calculator and you're gonna subtract the coefficients, these numbers. Let me underline them in blue. I'm gonna subtract these numbers. So when I go here and I subtract 0.456, subtract 6.78, you can see I get negative 6.32. Let me write that down. 324. And don't forget, we're going to keep the 10. So times 10. And we keep the exponent. Negative 4. And that's how you do that problem. And problem number 6, now we're going to be adding two numbers in scientific notation. I'm going to change the numbers. I'm going to give you similar ones. So let's say you have something like this, like 3.14 times 10 to the negative 25th power. And we're going to add, let's say, 2.48 times 10 to the negative 25th power. I'm sorry, negative 20. Let's say I use negative 27 power. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. So two numbers in scientific notation that we're adding. I'm giving you a similar one like you're doing number 6. Again, to add numbers in scientific notation, you must have the same exponent. If you look here, one of the exponents is negative 25. The other one is negative 27. They are not the same exponent. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to go to the smallest exponent. Now, which of these two negative numbers is more negative? That will be negative 27. Okay, this is more negative. The more negative the number is, the smaller it is. Okay, so I need to make negative 27 become negative 25. I want to make both exponents the same. So you always want the smallest number to become the larger one. Okay, and how do we do that? Well, if you add 2 to negative 27, that's how you get negative 25. Now, adding 2 to negative 27, it means we're going to have to move the decimal point 2 times to the left. And now I have an empty space, so I have to put a placeholder, a 0. And now we have a whole new number, 0.0248 times 10 to the negative 25th power. And now we can add the 3.14 times 10 to the negative 25th power. Why? Because now we have the same exponent. And when you have the same exponent, now you can add the coefficients, the numbers that I underline in blue. Okay, so bringing my calculator over here. Let's take 3.14. I'm going to add 0.0248. And you can see I got 3.1648 when I add the coefficients. And don't forget, we're going to keep the 10. So we're going to keep times 10. And we keep the same exponent. And that's how you do problem number 6. Problem number 7, very similar, okay, like we did in problem number 6. We are adding two numbers in scientific notation, so I'm going to change it a little bit. So negative 5.34 times 10 to the negative 18 power plus 5.7 times 10 to the negative 16 power. Okay, so I'm just giving you similar examples like the original problem. Don't forget that when you add and subtract numbers in scientific notation, you must have the same exponent. Okay, here's my exponent negative 18. My other exponent is negative 16. They're not the same. When they're not the same, you're going to identify the smaller exponent. Remember, when you're working with negative numbers, the more negative the number is, smaller it will be the number. So this is the smallest exponent. And I want to make the smaller exponent become the larger exponent. So I want negative 18 become negative 16. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 2. Okay, so you do that in the calculator, you're going to get negative 16. Now, what does plus 2 mean? I'm going to take the decimal point of negative 5.34 and I'm going to move it 2 times to the left. And then you have an empty space. You're going to put a 0. So you have a new number, negative 0.0534 times 10 to the negative 16 power. And now we can add the 5.7 times 10 to the negative 16 power. Why we can add them? We have the same exponent. So when you have the same exponent, you're going to add the coefficients, the numbers that I underline in blue. Using your calculator, let's add those two numbers. So negative 0.0534. I'm going to add 5.7. And you can see I got 5.6466. Let me move this up. We keep times 10 and we keep the same exponent. And that's how you do these problems.